Hi, I'm Luke. Welcome back to 100 Days of SwiftUI. On to day 10, Structs Part 1. Okay, I'm doing the test for creating your own structs. Is this Swift code valid, true or false? So we have a struct order. We have two properties, customer ID and item ID of type int. We have let order equal order, customer, it should be customer ID, not customer, and item ID, not item. So this is not valid. Okay. A struct chess piece with a property name, type string, and an int called value. That looks valid. Okay, a struct called dog. Okay, it's got it spelled with a capital D. Oh yeah. We have a variable name type string and breed type string. I'd say this is valid. It should be in braces, not parentheses. Okay. Okay, we have a struct user, property name, a string called anonymous, and an age of type int. So the name there should overwrite the built-in anonymous, and it's given an age. Yeah, I'd say that's valid. Okay, we have a struct phone, property manufacturer of type string, and screen size of type double. Yeah, that looks valid. A struct Levi jeans with a property fit number of type int, and waist int, and leg int. And we've got jeans equals Levi jeans, fit number. Oh, these are passing in strings, not ints. So this is not valid. Okay, we have a struct weather forecast, property day number of type int, and temperature of type int. Monday equals weather forecast, day number is 1, that's an int, that's good. And temperature is 25, that's an int, that's good. Yeah, I'd say that this is valid. Okay, we have a struct Rubik's Cube with the variable size equals 3. And we've got large equals Rubik's Cube 5. It doesn't say size colon 5, it just says 5, so this is not valid. Okay, we have a struct book with a property title, which is a string, an author, which is a string defaulting to unknown, and page count, which is an int defaulting to 0. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, we have a struct boat with a, it's given the variable names, but it's not saying like var in front of them. So this would not be valid. We have a struct player with the property name of type string and position of type string. Let Harry equal player, giving the name and the position. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, we have a struct cup with the property size of type int and color. Okay, it's got white there, but it's not surrounded by quotes like it would for a string. And it just has white out of nowhere without defining it. So that would be not valid. Okay, one wrong. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, now we're trying the test for mutating methods. We have a struct diary. We have a property entries, which is a string, and a mutating func add. takes in a string called entry, and it adds the entry to the end of entries. Yeah, that looks valid. Okay, we have the structure surgeon, the property operations performed equals 0, int, which is an int, and a mutating func operate, and it takes in a string, it prints a message, and then increases the operations performed. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, we have the struct stapler. We have a property staple count of type int. Okay, it's changing the staple count, but it's not actually saying it's mutating, so this would not be valid. Okay, we have the struct tree. We have a height, which is an int, and a mutating function grow, and it just increases the height. Yeah, this looks valid. Oh, it's a double. Okay. Right, we have a struct car. We have a property mileage, which is an int, and a mutating function drive with int as a distance as an int, and it just adds the distance to the mileage. Yeah, this looks valid. Oh, it's a let and not a var. Okay. Okay, we have a structured book. We have total pages, which is an int, and pages left to read, which is int that defaults to 0. We have a mutating function read, takes in an int called pages. Okay, from what I can see, this looks valid. We have a structure called bank account. We have a variable balance, which is an int. Mutating function donate to charity, takes in an integer called amount, and reduces the balance by the amount. This looks valid. We have a structure switch. Property is on, which is a bool. Mutating function toggle, and it just changes the value of is on. Yeah, this was valid. Toggle is missing the parentheses. We have a structure meeting room. The variable is booked equals true. So it's a bool. We've got the mutate. It says mutating book, but not mutating function book. So that's not valid. We have a structure DeLorean. Property speed, which defaults to 0, which is an int. A mutating function accelerate, which increases the speed. And it calls this travel through time function, which doesn't change anything, so it doesn't need to be mutating. So yes, this looks valid. We have a structure singer, a property name, which is a string, and a bank balance, which is a double. We have a mutating function go on tour, which takes in an int called venues, and it increases the bank balance by venues. Okay, bank balance is a double, and venues is an int, and so it's trying to assign an int to a double, so that's not valid. Okay, we have a structure bicycle with a property current gear, which is an int, a mutating function change gear. It takes in an int called new gear, referred to externally as 2, So it just switches the current gear for the new gear. Yeah, that looks valid. Okay, so a few wrong there. Okay, now I'm going to do the test for computed properties. So struct code with a property language, which is a string. Property contains errors, which is a boolean defaulting to false. And a property report. Um, if it contains errors, it says this language code has bugs. Otherwise, it returns this looks good to me. I think it should have a type. I don't think that's valid. Yeah. Okay, we have a struct city with a property population, which is a string, and description, which is a string. If population is greater than 100,000, this is a small city. If it's less than a million, this is a medium-sized city. Otherwise, this is a large city. We've got Tokyo City, population 12 million, so it's going to return this as a large city. Yeah, this looks valid. Oh, it's a string. Okay. Okay, we have a struct candle, property burn length, which is an integer, and already burned, which is an integer defaulting to 0, and burn. We've got a let, so that would be a constant. So I don't think that is valid. Yeah. Okay, we have a struct wine with the property age, which is an integer, and is vintage, which is a boolean, and a computed property price, which is an integer. If it's vintage, it's returning the age plus 20. Otherwise, it returns the age plus 5. And we've got a wine Malbec. Age is 2. Is vintage is true. And it prints out the price. Yeah, that looks valid. Okay, we have a structure medicine, a property amount, which is an integer, and frequency, which is an integer, and computed property dosage, which is a string. And it returns take amount pills frequency times a day. It's using turn. No, that should be right. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, we have a structured dog with a property breed, which is a string, and cuteness, which is an int, and rating, which is a string, which is a computed property. Right. It's doing print statements where it should be return. I don't think this is valid. Yeah, it has to return them rather than print. Okay, we have a struct sunglasses with the property protection level, which is an integer, and computed property vision test, which is a string. If the protection level is less than 3, otherwise if it's less than 6, just right. And if it's less than 10, it's who turns the lights out. Yep, it's returning strings. That looks valid. Oh, there's no else to cover it. Yeah, okay. Okay, we have a structure sword fighter with a property name, which is a string, and a computed property introduction, which is returns the string and returns hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. Yeah, that looks valid. We have a struct race, which has a property distance, which is an integer, and a property runners, which is a integer defaulting to 0, and a computed property description, which is a string. It's doing equal string, not colon string, so I don't think that's valid. Yeah. I have a structure keyboard with a property is mechanical, which defaults to false, and a computed property noise level, which is an int. And if it's mechanical, it's going to return 11, otherwise it returns a 3. Yeah, that does look valid. Keyboard is mechanical is true. So that's going to return an 11. Yeah. All right, we have a struct investor with a property age, which is an integer, and investment plan, which is a computed property and returns a string. If age is less than 30, it's going to return shares. Else, if age is greater than 60, it's going to return equities. Otherwise, it's going to return bonds. Mr. age is 38, so it's going to return equities. Yep, that looks valid. And we have a struct toy with a property color, which is a string, and a computed property is for girls, which is a boolean. Okay, if color is pink, it's going to return true, else it's going to return true anyway. I mean, there's no point checking if it's color if it's going to return true anyway. And I mean, it covers everything with the else, so it's going to be valid. Yeah, I'd say this is valid. Yeah. Okay, couple wrong, but we're working on it. Okay, now I'm going to do the test for property observers. So we have a structure bank account, a property name, which is a string, a property is millionaire, which defaults to false, and a computed property balance, which is an int. We've got a did set. So if balance is less than, if balance is greater than 1 million, then is millionaire is true. Otherwise, it's false. So this will change every time the balance is changed, and we'll set their millionaire status. Yeah, that looks good. All right, we have a structure app, property name, which is a string, and computed property is on sale, which is a boolean. So we've got a did set. So if is on sale is true, it will print go and download my app. Else it'll print maybe download it later. Yeah, I can't see anything wrong with this. So yeah. All right, we have a structure child with a property name, which is a string, and computer property age, which is an int. And if the age changes, it prints happy birthday. Yeah, this looks good. All right, we've got a structure step counter with a computed property steps, which is an int. And it's got has set, but that's not a proper keyword. It should be did set. I Yeah, this isn't valid. Yeah. All right, we've got a structure person with a computer property close, which is a string. It's got a did set. And so when close are changed, it's changing to the whatever close is. So yeah, that looks valid. Okay, we have a structure fuzzy clock and computed property hour, which is an int. Okay, it's got dset, not did set, so that's not valid. We have a structure fish tank, which has property capacity, which is an int, and a computed property fish count, which is an int. It's got a did set. And if the fish count is greater than capacity, it's going to say you have too many fish. Yeah, that looks valid. We have a structured dog with computed property age. It doesn't have the type there, so that's not valid. We have a structured football match with it's using let, not var, so these are constants, so that's not going to work. Right, we have a structured game with a computed property score, which is an int. It's got a div set, and your score is now score, so yep, that's valid. We have a structure house with a property, computed property number of occupants, which is an int. It's got a div set, and it's number of occupants people live here now. All right, it's got the did set with a colon, not the curly brackets, so I don't think that's going to be valid. Yeah. And we've got an enum student with a property name, which is a string. I haven't seen these as enums before, so I'm not sure if that's valid. I don't think that's valid. Yeah. Awesome. I got all of them right. Now I'm going to do the test for initializers. So we have a structure book, the property title, which is a string, and a property author, which is a string, and an init method for takes in a string called book title. It's got the setter for title, but it doesn't have one for author, so I don't think that's valid. Yeah. We have a struct called media and a string called type and an int called users. This init method isn't setting any of these, so that's not valid. We have a struct experiment and a variable cost equals 0. Experiment. So this is going to use the built-in initializer, so this should be valid. All right, we have a structure called wine, property grape, which is a string, and property region, which is a string. All right, it's trying to call it with grapes, not grape, so that's not going to be valid. Okay, we have a struct dictionary with the property words, and it's going to be a empty set of strings. And dictionary is going to call dictionary. I think that's a reserved word, so I don't think that's going to be valid. Oh, that is valid. Okay. Okay, we have a structure sport with a variable name, which is a string, and is Olympic sport, which is a boolean. Chess boxing. Okay, so chess boxing will be a sport. It's passing in a name and it's passing in the boolean as a string, not a boolean. So that's not going to be valid. Okay, we have a structure country. We have a property name, which is a string, and a property use imperial measurements, which is a boolean. An initialize method takes in country name. So it's going to set name to country name. And so it's creating an array of strings for imperial countries. And it's going to check if the name that's passed in is one of these countries. And if it is, it's going to, okay, it's setting the user's imperial measurements to true. Otherwise, it's going to set it to false. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, we have a structured tree with a property type, which is a string, and a property hasFruit, which is a boolean. All right, it's init. It doesn't have to be called with func. It can just be called init. So that's not going to be valid. Yeah. All right, we have a structure starship. We have a name, which is a string, and a property called maxwarp, which is a double, and an initializer method, which takes in a string called starship name, and it sets name to starship name, but it isn't setting the maxwarp. So that's not going to be valid because it has to do all the variables. Yeah. Okay, we have a structure message, which contains a property called from, which is a string, a property called to, which is a string, and a property content, which is a string. And we've got an initializer method, and it covers from, to, and content. Yep, this looks true. We have a structure power tool with a property name, which is a string, and a property cost, which is an integer. It's going to pass in the name, Amadrill, and cost 80. Yep, that looks valid. And we have a structure cabinet with a property height, which is a double, and width, which is a double, and area, which is a double. Okay, we've got an init method, which will take in a height and a width, and it sets the height and the width, and it automatically sets the area to the height multiplied by the width. So it's covering all three properties there. And yeah, this looks valid. Awesome. Okay, one wrong, but we're getting better. Now I'm going to do the test for referring to the current instance. So we have a struct conference with a property name, which is a string, and a property location, which is a string. And we've got an init method that takes in a string and it takes in a name and location, and sets self.name to name and self.location to location. Yeah, so that looks valid. We have a struct superhero with a property nickname, which is a string, and a property powers, which is an array of strings. And our init method takes in a nickname, which is a string, and superpowers, which is an array of strings. And it sets them to the nickname and the powers. Yep, that looks valid. All right, we have a structure kitchen with a property utensils, which is an array of strings. And we've got an init method that takes in utensils, which is an array of strings, and it sets it to itself. Yep, that looks valid. We have a structure parent with a property number of kids, which is an integer, and tiredness percent, which is an integer. And we've got an init method that takes in, it's got a space between the init and the kids, so the bracket, so that's not going to be valid. Oh, and also tiredness percent has not been set. Oh, that might be okay then. But yeah, it has to cover all the properties. We have a structure language, which has a property name English, which is string, and name local, which is a string, and speaker count, which is an integer. And we've got an init method, takes in a string called English and a string called local, and an integer called speaker count. And setting name.english to English, name.local to local, and speaker count to speaker count. Yeah, that looks valid. The parameter has names English and local. Oh, down there it's calling it with the internal names, not the init method names. Okay. Okay, we have a structure bus, which has a property route number, which is a string, and an init method, which takes in an int called route. It's trying to set a string to an int, so that is not going to work. Okay, I have a structure cat with name, which is a string, and breed, which is a string, and meow volume, which is an integer. It has an init method. It takes in a string called name and a string called breed, and it's setting name and breed, but it's not setting meow volume, so that is not going to be a valid initializer. Okay, we have a struct called character and a string called name. Actor is a reserved word, so it's not going to allow that to be used. So I'd say that's false. Oh, it is valid. Okay. We have a structure cottage with the property rooms, which is an int, and a property rating, which is an int that defaults to 5. We have an initialize method taking in rooms, which is an int, and sets rooms to rooms. Because this has a default value, I believe it doesn't have to be set in the initializer. Yeah, that's valid. Okay, we have a struct framework, which takes in which has a property called name, which is a string, and a property language, which is a string. We have an initializer method. Okay, it's calling func before the initializer, so that's not going to be valid. Okay, we have a structure computer with a property CPUs, which is an int, and a property RAM gigabytes, which is an int. We have an init method called CPUs. We have an init method that takes in an integer called CPUs and an integer called RAM, and it sets self.cpu. Okay, self.ram should actually be RAM GB, so that's not going to be valid. And we have a structure called district with a property number, which is an int, and a property supervisor, which is a string. We've got an init method that takes in a number, which is an int, and supervisor, which is a string. And it sets number to number and self.supervisor to supervisor. And yeah, that looks valid. Okay, so a couple wrong. Thanks for watching. If you want to follow along, the link is in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.